Welcome to this exciting tutorial on Adobe Illustrator, how you can use Adobe Illustrator to squeeze the sponge on your web design comps for mobile apps, for gaming, basically for anything. Some of the very best advice I got when I was 11, 12 years old on my paper route, and by the end of the summer, a lot of my friends actually gave up their paper routes, and I wound up taking over. I had several morning routes and a couple afternoon routes, so at the tender age of 11 or 12, I was making, wasn't making much back then, but it sounds like a lot now, or back then it did. I was making about 130, 140 bucks a week, and I got some very good advice. If you want to run with the dogs, you can't piss like a puppy. So if you want to separate your skills from somebody else's, if you want to be a rock star at your job or for your clients, then pay attention to this video. I did a video series like this a while ago, and I'm just updating it for the new version of Illustrator 2014. Everything's kind of the same, but just because I can, here it goes. All right, the big difference between web and print, of course, is points and pixels. There's 72 points to an inch. There's also 72 pixels to an inch. So we're just going to make something called web comp. Now, if you pay attention to this, you'll be way ahead of the game. I can assure you you've never seen a technique like this before, unless, of course, you've seen my videos. So we're going to make a web comp that's 960 by 560. Now, that basically will fit inside the size of a 13-inch monitor, so you don't have to scroll. Basically, it's called above the fold. So I'm going to hit OK. Second thing we're going to do, of course, is save the changes, make a change, save a change. Now, before we go any further, I just want to point out a few things. I'm working in Illustrator Essentials work mode. If you're not in Essentials, I suggest you go up here and reset to Essentials. This way we'll be on the same page. Now, when I create a web design or a print design or a brochure or business card, one of the first things I always do is bring up my rulers, Command R, Macintosh, Control R for Windows. Now, the first tool that I always initialize is the direct selection tool. You can get to that by hitting the letter A. A is the direct selection tool. Now, here's the production technique I want to share with you. The advantage of that tool is I want to select something. So as an example, if I go to my M key and create a box right here, and I'm just going to change the color of this box so it's something other than white so you can actually see this. So right now, if I want to create another box, and this has probably happened to you, you want to select something. So you're not thinking about this, you go to select this and you get this dialog box. Well, that's because you're in the rectangle tool. The rectangle tool creates rectangles. However, if you hold down the Command key, Macintosh Control key for Windows, I can put this box any place on the screen that I want to. So it's a really powerful production technique. So here's what I want to share with you. I'm going to hit the delete key for a second, and I'm just going to change this to a soft putty color for the fill, and for the stroke, if you go over here to the fill stroke, for the stroke, I don't want this to have a stroke, so I'm going to hit the / key, hit the X key again to go back to the fill. So here's my objective. I'm going to hit Command minus. Now I'm working on Macintosh. Windows, that would be Control minus. I'm just going to zoom out here for a second. Now, as best I can, I'm going to create a box that fits up this entire size. Now, the reason I said as best I can, because if it's not exactly perfect, here's what I can do. I'm going to go to the window menu, and I'm going to bring up my transform dialog box. The transform dialog box is going to tell me exactly how big something is. Now, in this particular case, I actually nailed it right on the money. I got it exactly in that size. So the objective of this particular video is I want to share with you how to work smart using what's called the golden ratio of design. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you do a Google search for golden ratio design, you'll pop up things like sunflowers and the pyramids and everything in nature basically adheres to this policy of the golden ratio design. So let me share with you how it works. So the golden ratio of design, and if you want to get good design, Twitter, Facebook, a lot of high-end websites use the same concept. It's based on a number ratio of 1.618. I'm going to take this number and I'm just going to put this up here to the top so you kind of get this into your thinking. I'm going to take this and I'm just going to put this right up in here, and I'll just lock that in place. I'll just make it white so you can see it. How do I lock an object? Anything about an object is under the object menu. Based on these choices, lock object, Command 2. Make a change, save a change. So let's understand what I mean by that. So right now I have this selected. So let's say I wanted to use this to create a golden ratio design. So how can I do that? Well, here's a very important step I can do. I can take the object here, and let's say that I can kind of guess and say, well, maybe it's someplace over in this area here. So I'm going to take this information that I have, I'm going to take the object that's on the screen, So taking the object that's on the screen, I want to have two objects. So I'm going to take the object, copy, Command C, and paste in front, Command F. Command F, Control F for Windows. So now there's two of them. One's in the front, one's in the back. Now, just so it's visually different, I'm just going to make this a different color. I'm going to make it a darker color. So I'm going to take this number, which is 960 pixels wide, and I'm going to divide that by 1.618. And that is my golden ratio design right there. So this is great for any type of subdivision because the eye has a propensity to look at something that's broken up into that perfect ratio of 1.618. Now, I don't want to get technical and talk about all kinds of crazy stuff. I just want to share with you, if you took this layout right now and put it over on top of Twitter as an example, you'll see Twitter set up exactly the same way using the golden ratio of design 1.618. Now, this, if you wanted to build this from scratch, a golden ratio design, let me share with you a simple way to do that. So the first thing I would do is get started with a rectangle, a perfect rectangle or a perfect square. And I'm just going to put that rectangle right here. Again, it doesn't matter as long as it's just a proportional equal side rectangle, which is a square. Then I go to my ellipse tool, and if I have my smart guides on under the view menu, view smart guides, by default it is turned on. So wherever you put your cursor, that's going to help and assist you. So I'm going to hold down the Option key and drag from the center and hold down the Shift key to constrain that. So my objective right here is to get that circle so basically top touches the bottom of the ellipse, touches the top of the square. Now how does this help me? Well, I'm going to make this a different color, and I want to send this backward, but not to the back. Anything about the object is under the object menu. So based on these choices, object arrange, send backward, not all the way to the back because I don't want to put it behind this putty shape. I'm just going to send it backward so you can actually see what we're doing. So we can use this as a basis to build the next object. So how would we do that? Well, if we go to our M4 rectangle tool again, and I'm just going to create a different color so it's just visually different. Didn't mean to do that. Select a different color, and I'm going to create a rectangle from point A, and as long as I don't go past that circle point right there, that is a perfect golden ratio. Now, how would I know that? Well, first of all, because I just shared that with you, but how do I know this is some kind of trickery that, oh yeah, you put a circle, you put a square, oh, it's golden ratio? Well, let's understand this. Let's take this object, I'm going to drag the object down to the bottom, and just so it's just visually different, I'm going to make it a different color. In fact, let's make it this blue color. Right, so now if I take that same shape, I'm going to copy, again what we did before, copy, Command C, Control C for Windows, and paste in front. Okay, now the one that's in front, I'm just going to make a different color. So there's two right there. Then I'm going to take this and times that number. Here's our number up here, 1.618. I'm going to times that 1.618. And there you go. So if I take this object, arrange the object, and send it backward, you'll see that it's exactly on the money. Okay, so that's how you can get the golden ratio of design into your design, whether you're doing print work, magazine layout, web design layout, etc., etc. Now, the purpose of this particular video that you're watching is to share with you how to let Illustrator do your web comp for you, and we can work with the golden ratio inside the comp as well. So one of the things you may consider doing here, if I want to basically sector this out, I'm going to put a guide where the golden ratio division would be. So I'm going to select this, copy, Command C, Command F, paste in front, the one that's in front. I'm going to divide that because we're going the other way. We're building down, divide by 1.618. Boom. Actually, I didn't do that right. Divide by 1.618. Okay, so right there, I'm just going to do that to put the guide here. So I'm going to put a guide right there on the money and delete the other object. So that will tell me right there that that's a good way to display. So as an example, if this is a WordPress site, if this is a Dreamweaver site, what I'm going to share with you, what I am sharing with you, is that you can take Illustrator, work smart, do some CSS layout designs, convert everything to percentages, and bring it into Dreamweaver either as a tracing image to build over on top of it, or to take that CSS that you build from Dreamweaver and put into a WordPress application. Now, of course, all these techniques I go into great detail in my all access course on thinklearnearn.guru. Okay, so I'm going to have a little banner at the bottom. So if you want to sign up for my all access course, you'll get every single course that I currently teach now and forever, which includes all my WordPress, all my Adobe software programs, plus Google SEO, sales, and marketing. Because my thinking is, what's the point of learning software if you can't make money with your skill set? That's what separates my training from other training. Is I teach you real world techniques, techniques you're not going to find someplace else. More importantly, techniques that are simple to understand. So let's move forward. All right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to select the object. Incidentally, if this guide I want to make sure the guide is locked. So we're going to go to guides and lock guides, which is not by default. If you just launched Illustrator for the first time, your guides are not locked. So just make sure your guides are locked. Make a change, save a change. Now, what I'm going to show you, unless you've seen my videos on this before, I don't care where else you go to training, other websites, schools, universities, I can pretty much assure you have not seen this technique. It's magic, it's great, and it works. So I'm going to select the object. Now, if you understand how Illustrator thinks, anything about the object is under the object menu. So based on these choices, we want to change the object. Now, the way that Illustrator works, it's object-based, which is vector-based graphics. It's scalable. It's a scalable vector graphic. But basically, objects are made of paths. Paths are made up of anchor points. So based on these choices, software simply comes down to choices. Object, path, split into grid. Now, by default, very important step here, this doesn't have a shortcut. So what you would do if you sign up for my all access course, I will share with you how to set up your own custom shortcut. And that's not the reason I want you to take my all access course, but just I'm not going to go into it in this particular video. So the shortcut I came up with for that is Command Option equals. So I can select the object and hit Command Option equals. That's going to bring up this dialog box. Now keep in mind, this is the fluid grid ratio, 960. So I'm going to break this up into 3 rows, and I want to have 20 pixels, which is a good standard default. I want to have 20 pixels in between my rows, and I want to go 12 rows across and then have 20 pixels in between each row as well. So if I hit the return key, I get something that looks like this. Now you may look at this and say, well, my head's going to fall off my shoulders because that's not looking too good at all. Well, you have little faith. Make a change, save a change. So now that I have this set up, watch what I can do with this. So as an example, right now, here's my golden ratio. So I'm just going to move this a little to the left, and here's a little trick here. I'm going to hit Command K. Command K will bring up my keyboard increments, Control K for Windows. And I'm going to move this 2 pixels at a time. And I'm just going to hit the right arrow key and just move that back right into place, right there. Because I know that this is my golden ratio right here. And then I'm going to take this and move this out 20 pixels. Well, how can I possibly move this out 20 pixels? Well, I can take the width right here and simply say plus 20, and it's going to move it exactly out 20 pixels. So right now I know that this would be a golden ratio design. Now, if I want to do the same for this as well, but we'll talk about that in a second. Well, this is all fine and dandy, but how does that work for web design? Well, because I don't want to have these individual columns here. I would drive my client nuts and my viewers nuts. So here's what we can do. In order to affect this, we need to select this. Now, in order to affect this, I'm simply holding down the Command key. And I also want to hold down the Option key or Alt key and Control key for Windows. Now it's selected, so now it can be affected. So now I can go back to Object, Path, split into grid, which is Command Option equal. That's the shortcut I set up. And I'm just going to change this back to, by hitting Tab twice, 1. Now it's set back to 1. How cool is that? I think that's really cool. Now this one, I'm going to do the same thing. Command Option equals, hit the Tab key a few times, change that back to 1, and if I preview that, that's what it looks like. Now what I want to do is I want to put maybe a banner ad and navigation below that. So I can go back to Command Option equals. I can break this into 2 rows split by 20 pixels. How cool is that? I guarantee you have not seen anything like this before. It's really that simple if you understand how to use the software. Now, I've been using Adobe Illustrator for 27 years, so if there's a faster, better way to do this, I'm the guy. I know more Illustrator than anybody on the planet. And I mean that very seriously. Back in the 90s, 91, 92, Adobe used to actually fly me out to their headquarters to teach their staff the best way to use Illustrator and Photoshop, and that's a true story. So now I'm going to take this information here. What I'd like to do with this is I'm going to break this up into 3 sections. So Command Option equals, and I'm going to have this go into hit the tab key. I want to break this up into 3 columns with 20 pixels in between, and just like that, I'm all set. No fuss, no muss. Really simple to do. Now, if you want to take this one step further, I could have made this one section and I made this another section to fall in line with our golden ratio design. We won't deal with that right now. Now, down here, let's say you want to put some thumbnails for a portfolio or maybe different news stories. So for this section down here, Command Option equals, we're going to break this down to, let's hit the tab key, we're going to have this be 5 columns with 20 pixels in between. Oh, wait a second, I heard somebody say not 5 columns, but what? 6 columns? Well, let's do that. Command Option equals, hit the tab key, and it's really this simple. I mean, what can be simpler than this? Most people don't consider Adobe Illustrator as a web design comp tool, but it's really an exciting tool because you can do whatever you want with it. Now, again, we would export this as a PNG or a JPEG file, bring that file into Dreamweaver as a tracing image, and build our CSS over on top of it. My apologies about that. I'm drinking Diet Coke, so sorry about that that little noise there. All right, now here's the next step. What I've done here is all well and good, but keep in mind that we built something that was pixel-based. Well, pixel-based is not very responsive. What is responsive is percentages. So how would I take something and make it fall into percentages? So as an example, if I select this, I can see that this is 572 pixels wide. Well, how does that help me? Well, here's what we can do, which is really kind of cool. We can either temporarily convert this to either 100 pixels and then divide that out, or 1,000 pixels. Now, since 960 is closer to 1,000, we're going to do exactly that. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to make that 1,000 pixels wide. Now, the advantage of what I just did, now I know exactly the percentages of everything. So if I click right here, if I move the decimal point over to the left one, this is 59.6 percentage points. This is 59.6%. This is 38.1%. Okay? Now, if you're not sure about that, if you took this number, so if I took this number, and I added it, I did the math right there, plus paste 977 plus 20 is 997. Now keep in mind, we've gone off the grid here, but believe me, it works. Now, another way of figuring this out, for those of you that slept through 4th grade math, is you could take your larger size and divide it by your bigger size. What do I mean by that? Well, let's undo this for a second. So I can say, okay, what percentage of this 572 of 960? Keep in mind, 960 is the width of our document. So I could take my smaller number, divide it by my larger number, and get the percentages of that right there. Now, in order to make this work effectively, what you'll need to do is click right here under Show Options and make sure you have Align to Pixel Grid turned off. Otherwise, it's going to scale that down. So I can take this number, you're taking the smaller number, that's how whole number math works. You're taking your smaller number, dividing it by your larger number, and you'll get that number right there. Again, 59.6%. You move the decimal point two over to the right. And the same thing with this. So you figure out, okay, what percentage is that? So I can take that, divide it by 960, and that is, well, again, I have to make sure this is turned off. So I take this number, divide it by 960, and there you go. So it's 38.1%. So it's a very simple way to get responsive design from your original pixel width. So as an example, what percentage is this? Well, that again, I have to turn the pixel grid off. So take the larger number, divide it by the smaller number, And there you go. This is 14.9%. So therefore, if you're making your CSS and these are article tags, you make them 14.9% plus whatever percentage this is. So what percentage is 20 of 960? Well, that's a simple one. So if I was to change this to 20 pixels and I was to divide that by 960, then that is basically 2%. Okay, it's 2%. So 20 pixels is 2%. So what I'm sharing with you is if you want to set this up at responsive design, figure that 2% is your gutter width, or 2% is your row space between the two. 2% is your gutter width here, and 2% is your gutter width top and bottom. So hopefully that made a lot of sense working with Adobe Illustrator. And again, I can export this as a JPEG or a PNG file, and then just build my CSS over on top of it inside of Dreamweaver. Now on this channel, if you go search through here, my channel, you'll see that I actually have an older video from a couple years back, but it still holds water today, of taking a Illustrator or a Fireworks design comp, bringing it into Adobe Illustrator, bringing it into Dreamweaver and doing a tracing image right over on top of it to make it pixel perfect every single time. So hopefully this was exciting. Hopefully this is techniques you can now use in the future. Thank you for being here. Again, there's a little incentive down at the bottom for signing up for my all-access course. I actually have a payment plan as well. If you're serious, and I mean this in all sincerity, if you're serious about making money and you want to learn things the right way, how to outthink, how to better produce, basically how to be your rock star to your clients, how to outshine your coworkers. I put a lot of time and effort into my videos. Training is all about technique. If you think for a second you're going to learn what I know based on my 27 years, if you think for a second you're going to learn a fraction of what I know, from marketing and sales to SEO to search engine to design to package design to logo development, you're not going to get this stuff for free at YouTube. You're just not. And if you do, you're going to be searching hours and hours and weeks. My videos are concise, lucid, to the point, and here to help you every step of the way. But here's the best part. I take my training very seriously, and my students equally as seriously. If you have a question, if you need help, I make my Skype account available to my students. I'm here to help you every step of the way. Thank you for being here. Thanks for watching my videos. My name is Robert Farrell. Think, learn, earn. Guru, carpe diem.